When someone pulls away from us, especially in the early stages of dating or even within a relationship, our instinct is often to close the gap, to reach out, to chase clarity, affection, or reassurance. And let's be honest, it's not because we suddenly have something urgent to say. It's because silence is scary. The distance feels threatening. We feel this panic rise in our chest, and the brain goes, fix this, do something, say something, get them back. But here's the truth. The silence you give when someone pulls away, that silence is your power. It's the most profound expression of self-respect. Because silence isn't just about not texting or not calling. It's about what you're telling the world, and more importantly, yourself, by choosing stillness over panic. When someone withdraws their energy and you don't immediately try to fill the gap, you're showing that your value doesn't decrease just because someone temporarily forgot how special you are. You're not defined by someone else's inconsistency. You're not here to chase breadcrumbs. You're not going to contort yourself, over-communicate, or beg for connection. And that restraint, that moment of doing nothing, that's strength. It says, I am worth choosing, not convincing. When you stay silent, what you're really doing is holding the mirror up. You're letting the other person see what life looks like without your energy in it, without your warmth, without your attention. And they might not realize that immediately, but over time, in the quiet, it echoes. It speaks volumes. And more often than not, it speaks louder than any desperate message or emotional plea could. Because people feel our energy long after we've stopped speaking, long after the messages stop coming in. That silence you give, it's not emptiness, it's presence. It's you saying, I care about myself enough to walk away from anything that feels unsure, unclear, or unreciprocated. Now, this isn't about playing games. Silence is not a tactic. It's not you pretending to be busy while secretly obsessing over their last text. It's not coldness or manipulation. It's clarity. It's your decision to not overinvest in someone who hasn't shown they deserve more of you. You're not punishing them. You're protecting you. And here's the thing most people don't realize. When you rush in with words trying to fix or explain or rescue the situation, you actually rob the other person of their opportunity to choose you. You insert yourself into a space that was meant for their reflection. You say, let me keep this alive for us, instead of asking, do you want to keep this alive? Staying silent allows you to watch, to observe, to see what they do with distance. Do they come closer? Do they step up? Or do they continue to fade? And their actions in that space tell you everything about where you stand, without you having to say a word. But here's the most important part. Silence also gives you the gift of clarity, because in that quiet, you begin to hear yourself again, your needs, your values. You reconnect with the version of you that doesn't chase emotionally unavailable people, that doesn't beg to be seen. And that woman, she's powerful. She doesn't lose her voice when someone loses interest. She becomes louder in who she is, not quieter. So many people think silence is weakness, that if you're not saying something, you're giving up. But silence, real silence, the kind that comes from peace, not ego, is not weakness, it's wisdom. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't to fight for someone, is to let them go. Or better yet, let them come back on their own and then decide if they still deserve you. We have to stop thinking that connection means constant communication. We have to stop believing that love is proved through chasing, that someone pulling away is a cue for us to run harder. Sometimes love is proved through not reacting, through being grounded, through choosing your dignity over your desire. And listen, I get it. The silence can feel unbearable at first. Your heart wants answers. Your mind wants closure. But here's what I want you to know. The person who's meant for you will never be scared off by your self-respect. If your silence causes someone to vanish forever, they were never meant to stay. If your stillness exposes their distance, It was distance that was always there. And if they do come back, it's not about celebrating the return. It's about evaluating how they return. Are they consistent? Are they clear? Or are they still running hot and cold, showing up on their time when it's easy? Your silence helped you see them more clearly. Now, don't lose that clarity the moment they speak again. So don't underestimate the power of restraint. Don't undervalue the dignity in doing nothing when everything inside you wants to do something. You're not being passive. You're being powerful. You're not losing them. You're choosing you. You're standing tall in your worth. You're saying, if you can't meet me where I am, I'm not going to keep lowering myself to reach you. Because staying silent after he pulls away isn't about proving a point. It's about protecting your peace. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is absolutely nothing when someone pulls away. Our instinct is to chase, to fill the silence, to fix the disconnect. We feel the shift in their energy, and it triggers something deep inside us, the fear of loss, of abandonment, of rejection. So we go into overdrive. We send the double texts, ask if they're okay, try to reestablish closeness, hoping that if we just say the right thing or show them how much we care, they'll come back. But here's what most people don't understand. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do when someone pulls away is nothing, Sealant. Real, calm, grounded silence is not about playing games. It's not about manipulation. It's about honoring your value. And it's about giving the other person something that's actually rare in today's world: space. When you stay silent after he pulls away, you create a void. And that void is uncomfortable, not just for you, but for him. You remove your energy, your warmth, your presence. You take away something that he may have taken for granted. And in that emptiness, something interesting happens. He gets to feel the reality of your absence. We often think that being present all the time is how we prove our worth. But being constantly available doesn't always make someone appreciate you more. It can actually do the opposite. It can dilute your impact. If your presence is always guaranteed, why would he ever fear losing it? It's in the moments of silence, in the absence, where impact lives. That's where someone has the chance to realize what they had or what they're about to lose. When someone pulls away, they're often testing something unconsciously. They're trying to figure out how they feel, what they want, or if you're really as invested as they are, they may not even be fully aware of it themselves. But your response teaches them how to treat you. If your instinct is to immediately reach out, chase, or demand answers, you're teaching them, my fear of losing you is stronger than my belief that I deserve someone who chooses me fully. But if your instinct is to lean back, to stay centered, to let them have the distance they clearly need, you're saying something completely different. You're saying, I don't chase love. I don't beg for attention, right? I don't force connection. I allow it, and I receive it when it's real. And that silence, that's when they begin to feel. Not just think, feel. Because if someone truly values you, your silence won't go unnoticed. Your absence will speak louder than your words ever could. They'll replay the moments you shared. They'll wonder what you're thinking. They'll start to question why they pulled away, and more importantly, what they might be losing if they don't step forward again. There's a difference between waiting around and giving space. Waiting around keeps you stuck. Giving space is an empowered choice. One is rooted in fear, the other is rooted in strength. When you stay silent, you're not punishing him. You're allowing him to come towards you, or not. And that clarity is worth everything. Now, let's be honest. Silence isn't easy. It brings up every insecurity. You'll be tempted to reach out, to check in, to seek some form of validation or reassurance. But I want you to remember this. Your peace is more important than his response. Your silence is not a void to be filled with anxiety. It's a container for self-respect. It's the pause that allows you to see the truth. Because in that silence, you're not just giving him space, you're giving yourself something too. You're giving yourself the chance to observe, to see what he does when you're not making all the effort, to witness whether he chooses to show up or if he quietly lets things fade. And that's information. That's gold. If he reaches back out, great. You now have someone who's realized your value in your absence. If he doesn't, even better. Because now, it's the future, built on chasing someone who was never fully in. Either way, silence gives you clarity. When someone pulls away, they're communicating something, even if they don't have the words. And your silence becomes your response. It says, I'm listening, I see the distance, and instead of forcing anything, I'm allowing this space to reveal what's real. And if he truly cares, if he truly values who you are, he won't stay in that silence. He'll feel it. He'll miss you. He'll remember the way you made him feel. And eventually, he'll come back. Not because you reminded him, but because he realized it for himself. Silence isn't passive. It's active restraint. It's emotional intelligence. It's strength under control. And when you stay silent after he pulls away, you give him the gift of perspective and yourself, the gift of dignity. Because sometimes the most powerful move you can make is no move at all. When someone pulls away, the immediate temptation is to react, to text more, call more, maybe even over-explain ourselves, thinking that if we just say the right thing, everything will go back to how it was. But here's the thing, doing that is actually the opposite of what you should do. Impultus, a knee-jerk response, driven by fear. Fear of losing them, fear of being misunderstood, fear of rejection. And yet, all of that fear is based on an assumption that more effort will fix things. The truth is, it rarely does. In fact, it often makes things worse. You see, when you chase, you're playing into a pattern that leads to an unhealthy dynamic. It sets up a cycle where you're constantly working to gain someone's attention, and they become accustomed to it. It's almost as if you're saying, I need you to validate me, to make me feel wanted. The problem with that is you start to lose yourself in the process. You stop showing up as your best self, as someone who is whole and worthy of love and respect, regardless of whether or not they respond the way you want them to. In those moments, you begin to forget your own value. But when you don't chase, when you pull back and allow space to exist, it forces both of you to reset. And that reset is so powerful. Why? Because it shifts the energy of the entire situation. It shifts it from neediness and desperation to respect and confidence. You stop over pursuing, which opens up space for them to step forward. You make it clear that you're not willing to chase someone who is pulling away. It's a quiet but profound act of self-respect. Now, I know that the idea of staying silent can feel uncomfortable at first. The silence might feel like rejection or like you're making things worse. You might even wonder if you're losing them forever. But silence doesn't mean abandonment. It doesn't mean you've given up or that you're indifferent. It's simply a choice to stop trying to control a situation that's outside of your control. It's about releasing the need for constant reassurance and trusting that whatever happens, you'll be okay. Think of it this way. The more you chase, the more you reinforce that you're trying to fix something that may not need fixing at all. It's like constantly trying to solve a problem that hasn't been fully presented yet. Maybe he's pulling away because he's figuring things out. Maybe he's processing something quietly internally and he needs time. Or perhaps he just needs a little space to miss you. When you give him that space, you're creating an environment where he can come back to you on his own terms with clarity and a renewed sense of desire. The truth is, he'll appreciate you more for not chasing. And here's another important thing. When you stop chasing the wrong things. Instead of putting all your energy into convincing someone to choose you, you start to put that energy back into yourself. You begin to focus on your own growth, your own life, your own pursuits. And when you do that, you naturally become more magnetic. You're no longer someone who is dependent on external validation. You are your own source of confidence, and that's incredibly attractive. But even more important, this shift creates a more balanced dynamic. Relationships thrive when both parties bring something to the table, when both individuals are contributing equally, when neither person feels like they have to beg for love or attention. If you're constantly pursuing him, you're making the relationship about his comfort and his desires, not your own. The more you chase, the less you communicate the value you place on yourself. You're essentially telling him that you're willing to overgive while he is allowed to under-contribute. When you stop chasing, you're letting him understand what he risks losing. You're making it clear that you won't be around forever if he's not putting in the effort. And that doesn't mean playing games or acting like you don't care. Far from it. It just means being emotionally mature and knowing that you won't settle for crumbs. It means not forcing something that doesn't feel right. It means being confident enough to step back, give him space, and let him realize that you're worth the effort. It's important to remember that love isn't a race, and it's certainly not a game of who can be the most available or the most attentive. True connection is built on respect, shared effort, and understanding. Here's another thought to consider. When you don't chase, you stop flooding the relationship with pressure. One of the reasons people pull away in the first place is because they feel overwhelmed or suffocated. If you're constantly texting or reaching out, it may unintentionally create a sense of urgency or expectation that the other person isn't ready for. By staying silent, you're not putting additional stress on the relationship. You're giving the other person the time and space they need to breathe and figure out their feelings. You allow them to come to you when they are ready, rather than forcing the issue before they've had time to process. And while it might feel difficult, the truth is silence can also help you gain perspective. When you're not in constant contact, you're giving yourself the chance to assess the situation clearly. You're no longer reacting emotionally to every move he makes. Instead, you can look at the bigger picture, reflect on whether this is a relationship that aligns with your values, and decide what you truly want. This space allows you to see things without the fog of constant communication clouding your judgment. It allows you to evaluate whether you're both in the same place emotionally, or if there's an imbalance that needs addressing. It's crucial to remember that by choosing silence, you're not giving up on the relationship. Instead, you're giving both of you the opportunity to reflect, breathe, and come back with a clearer perspective. You're not allowing fear to dictate your actions. And most importantly, you're showing yourself that you deserve someone who wants to meet you halfway, who doesn't need constant chasing to feel secure in the connection. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where he pulls away, try this. Step back. Stop chasing. Trust that the space will do wonders, not only for him, but for you too. And if he values what you bring to the table, he'll come back. But if not, then you've just saved yourself time, energy, and heartache in the long run. Silence is powerful. It's not weakness, it's strength in knowing your worth. When he pulls away, the natural instinct for many of us is to reach out, to close the gap, to try to fix whatever has shifted. It's as if we feel we need to bridge the space, to fill the silence, to give him more of us, more attention, more energy, more explanation. But what if I told you that staying silent after he pulls away is one of the most powerful actions you can take? What if you gave him the responsibility to reconnect? The key here isn't about playing games or being passive. It's about knowing your worth, about setting a standard for how you expect to be treated and not lowering that standard just because there's uncertainty. Silence in this situation isn't a punishment, it's a reset. And by staying silent, you give him the opportunity to step up, to prove that his actions match his words. Think about it. How often do we chase, explain, and offer ourselves on a platter when things start to feel off? How often do we feel like if we just say the right thing or do the right thing, the situation will resolve? But all we're really doing in that moment is reinforcing the idea that our emotional security is tied to his response, that we need him to behave a certain way for us to feel okay. Now, the reality is, when you stay silent, you're not putting the responsibility of your emotional well-being onto him. You're simply stepping back and creating the space he needs to step up if he wants to. You see, relationships are built on reciprocity. If you're the one constantly initiating, constantly giving, constantly trying to solve every problem, you're not leaving room for the other person to show you who they truly are. You're not giving them the chance to prove their worth. And in a relationship, that proof matters. Silence creates a void. And in that void, he has to ask himself, do I want this? Am I willing to put in the effort? By not filling that void with words or actions, you allow him to step into that question, to confront it, and to decide for himself if he values what you bring to the table. But here's the thing. If he doesn't feel the urge to reach out to fill that void himself, then you're given clarity on where you stand. And that clarity is your strength. When you give him that responsibility, you show him that you're not a placeholder. You're not someone to be kept around when it's convenient. You're someone who values themselves enough not to chase someone who isn't actively pursuing them. And here's the secret. The more you stop chasing, the more attractive you become. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're showing up for yourself. You're demonstrating that your energy, your time, your love, it's not to be taken for granted. Here's where it gets interesting. By staying silent, you're also giving yourself the opportunity to step back and really think about what you need and want in this dynamic. You see, when emotions are running high, it's easy to act from a place of panic, of fear, or of wanting to avoid the pain of uncertainty. But silence helps to recalibrate. It brings clarity. And sometimes, in that clarity, you realize that what you're chasing isn't what you truly want or need. It forces you to reflect. Do I really want to be with someone who isn't showing up for me the way I show up for them? And let's be clear here. So it's not about punishing him for pulling away. It's not about trying to manipulate him into coming back. It's about understanding that you deserve someone who will make the effort without you having to ask for it. If he's truly interested, your silence gives him a clear opportunity to come forward, to be intentional, to prove that he values you. If he doesn't take that opportunity, that's not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of his priority. And that's where you gain insight into whether or not this person is truly the right one for you. The beauty of staying silent in this moment is that it shifts the dynamic. You're no longer chasing, no longer seeking validation. You've taken a step back, and now the ball is in his court. He gets to decide whether he's willing to put in the effort, whether he's willing to do what it takes to win you back. And in doing so, you create a healthier dynamic, one where both people are equally invested, equally involved. And that's what makes a relationship thrive. If he values you, your silence won't drive him away. It'll cause him to reflect, to understand what he might lose. But if he doesn't value you in the way you deserve, your silence will reveal that too. Either way, you're winning because you're no longer putting yourself in the position of waiting or chasing. Here's the thing. We often think that if we give someone space, they'll forget about us. But the reality is, giving him space to come to you is a sign of trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your value, and trust that if this is meant to be, he'll reach out. He'll miss you, he'll recognize your worth, and if he doesn't, well, that's the moment you get to be grateful for the clarity, because now you know where you stand and you can move forward with peace in your heart. Ultimately, staying silent after he pulls away is an act of self-respect. It's about not allowing yourself to be the one constantly carrying the emotional weight of the relationship. It's about knowing that you deserve someone who wants to show up, someone who is willing to meet you halfway, and someone who is not afraid to step forward when there's a gap. When you stop chasing, you allow him the opportunity to chase. You stop filling the silence with fear and instead create room for him to decide if this is something he values enough to fight for. And that in itself can make all the difference. Let's take a moment to really understand something that's often overlooked when it comes to relationships, the emotional leakage that happens when we chase, when we push, when we try to fill the gaps with words. When someone pulls away, the immediate reaction is often to reach out, to explain, to justify, or even to apologize for something that we might not even need to apologize for. It's this fear-driven impulse that can undermine your emotional balance and ultimately your self-respect. When you feel that pullback, that distance, it's natural to panic, right? Our first instinct is to close the gap, to fix the situation, to try and get things back to how they were. But the reality is, when you chase with your words, when you over-explain yourself, when you try to convince someone to stay, you end up doing more harm than good. You're giving away your power, your energy, and ultimately your dignity. Is emotional leakage. When your fear of losing someone leads you to say things you don't mean, things that come from a place of desperation rather than clarity. The more you try to reach out and fill that silence with explanations, the more you dilute the value of your own presence. Think about it. If you're constantly filling the space with your thoughts, your fears, and your insecurities, there's no room for anything else. There's no room for him to process, no room for him to realize your worth. And here's the catch. The more you push, the more you end up pushing him away. It's a paradox that we often fail to see. It's not about the amount of words you say, it's about the energy behind those words. When your words are coming from fear, they don't have the same weight as when they come from confidence. Fear-based communication, even in the most well-intentioned attempts, makes you seem less certain of your value. When you reach out from a place of worry, what you're really communicating is, I'm afraid of losing you and I need you to stay for my own validation. But here's the truth. That's not attractive. It doesn't make you seem more desirable. It doesn't make him want to step up. It makes you look like someone who is afraid to stand alone. The beauty of staying silent is that it gives you control of your emotions and your response to the situation. You're not letting the fear of losing him dictate your behavior. You're standing firm, grounded in who you are, knowing that your value doesn't fluctuate based on his actions. And when you're not emotionally leaking, when you're not saying things just to fill the silence, you preserve your dignity. You protect your peace. In that silence, you remain whole. There's no scrambling, no excessive explanations. Instead, you focus on yourself, on your own growth, and on your own strength. It's a moment where you get to reclaim your power, where you can reflect on whether this relationship is truly in alignment with what you want, rather than trying to convince someone to meet you halfway. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with expressing yourself when it's coming from a place of calm, from a place of clarity. But when your emotions are all over the place, when you're reacting impulsively out of fear, those words don't reflect your best self. It's like putting out an invitation for someone to see your weakest, most vulnerable state, not your best self. You wouldn't walk into a room and immediately start begging for attention, would you? You wouldn't go up to someone and explain why you're worthy of their love. No. You would let your presence speak for itself. And that's the same in relationships. When you stop the emotional leakage, you give yourself the space to process everything that's happening. You can take a step back and really assess the situation. Do I really want this? Is this person adding to my life Or am I just desperately trying to make it work out of fear of being alone? You start to see things more clearly. The rush to fill the silence to convince him fades away. What remains is the clarity to decide whether this situation aligns with your worth and whether it's worth your energy to pursue further. But there's something even more important that happens when you stay silent. In this space, you give him the chance to step up. You don't do the work for him. You let him feel the weight of the decision. You allow him to recognize what he's missing, to appreciate your presence in his life, not because you've told him 100 times, but because he's had the time and space to reflect on it himself. The person who values you won't need a constant reminder of why you're special. They'll recognize it, they'll feel it, and they'll show it in their own time, on their own terms. Your silence then isn't just about preserving your own emotional energy. It's also about giving him the responsibility to reconnect. Relationships aren't one-sided. It's not all on you to keep things going. He too has to want it, and he has to be willing to put in the effort. When you chase, you take that responsibility away from him. But when you give him the space to step forward, you allow him the opportunity to show whether he values you enough to make the effort. You're not waiting for him to prove something to you. Instead, you're showing that you're worthy of respect and you expect nothing less. The reality is that when you keep talking, when you keep trying to fill the silence with words, you run the risk of missing out on this crucial moment. You miss the chance to let him come to his own conclusions, to let him appreciate you without you forcing it upon him. Silence isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the strength to stand firm in your value, to trust that if this connection is meant to be, it will be. And if not, you'll be okay on your own. So, next time he pulls away, resist the urge to fill the space with words. Stay silent, protect your energy, and let him step up if he truly values you. Trust that this moment of silence is exactly what's needed for both of you to reflect, to reassess, and to see whether this connection is truly worth investing in. Because when you stay silent after he pulls away, you don't just preserve your own dignity, you give him the space to appreciate who you really are. And that is always worth more than any explanation you could offer. When you stay silent after he pulls away, something powerful happens. It's not just about holding back from texting, calling, or reaching out. It's about holding onto your energy, your sense of self, and your personal magnetism. You see, so much of what we do in relationships, particularly in the early stages, is based on a deep-seated need to control. We try to control how the other person feels, they'll respond, how quickly they'll show us attention, or how much of their time they'll give us. But what happens when you let go of that need for control and instead trust yourself? What happens when you stop chasing and start to embody your full power, leaving room for the other person to meet you halfway? That's where your feminine energy truly comes alive. The truth is, when you stay silent after he pulls away, you're not doing it out of anger, frustration, or manipulation. No, you're doing it out of strength and self-respect. You're reminding him that your attention, your time, and your emotional investment are valuable, not to be given freely without thought. And when you do this, you stay in your power. You don't lose yourself in someone else's behavior or energy. You stay rooted in your own sense of worth, which is incredibly attractive. Think about it for a moment. We've all been in situations where we've felt the pull to react, to chase, to over-explain ourselves. When someone pulls away, the instinct is often to try and fix things, to make sure the other person knows how much we care, or to validate ourselves by getting them to respond. But that's not the most powerful place to be, is it? It's not about proving your value. It's about demonstrating that you are already whole, already worthy of the kind of love and attention that will enhance your life, not complete it. Staying silent doesn't mean you're cold or indifferent. It means you know who you are. You know that your worth isn't tied to anyone else's actions. And that level of confidence, that understanding of your value is magnetic. There's an inherent allure in someone who doesn't need anyone to complete them, someone who can walk away, not out of anger, but simply because they know that they deserve the best and won't settle for less. In those moments of silence, something else happens too. You create space for clarity, not only for him, but for you. When there's no pressure, no chasing, no frantic messages or attempts to get back to where things were, both parties have room to think. And often when we give space to someone, we allow them to come to their own conclusions, to feel the loss of our presence, and maybe even to miss us. And here's the thing, when someone misses you, it's real. It's not a response to your effort, but to who you are and what you bring into their life. But here's the key. You're not doing this to make him miss you. You're doing this to reclaim your own energy, your own center. When you stay silent, you're not manipulating the situation or playing games. You're simply stepping back, trusting that if there is a connection that is meant to grow, it will grow. If he's truly interested, he'll find his way back. If he's not, then he wasn't the right person for you. And you've just saved yourself a lot of emotional effort and energy. Now, it's important to realize that this silence isn't some kind of power play. It's not about trying to make him feel bad or to win some invisible battle. It's about recognizing your worth and standing firm in that recognition. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. Your silence isn't a punishment. It's a form of protection. It's about ensuring that your emotional world remains intact, no matter what's happening in his. When you stay silent, you stop yourself from overexposing your emotions. You stop from letting anxiety or fear dictate your responses. You hold your ground not out of pride, but out of deep understanding that your feelings and your emotional health are sacred. When you do this, when you embody that calm, composed silence, you allow the other person to step up or step away. You create a clear path for them to choose, but you've already chosen yourself. You're not waiting for someone else to validate your worth. You've already validated it. And let's be honest, this is one of the most attractive qualities anyone can have. Someone who isn't needy, someone who doesn't rely on external validation to feel good about themselves. That person is magnetic. And that's you. It's not just about showing him that you don't need him. It's about showing